Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning into this FTF News Live interview with Alan Kodnevsky, who is the interim CEO and Chief Legal Officer for T0. Today, we are going to focus on the emerging clearing and settlement landscape for publicly traded securities and private digital securities. We will speak with Alan about how T0 is able to manage both through its T0 alternative trading system, also known as an ATS. So before we dive into the questions, Alan, just please remind us what T0 is and what it does.
Absolutely, Eugene, and very, very grateful for you having me on this morning. T0 has been part of the pioneer class in the blockchain industry in advancing digital innovation for capital markets. T0 has developed unique technology and regulated assets, including the T0 ATS that you mentioned, that enables issuers to tokenize their capital tables and bring private securities to trade on the T0 ATS in a compliant manner that permits them to freely trade under federal securities laws when they're eligible to do so, and permits investors who before that haven't had access to unique private assets to invest in them and trade them in a continuous, automated, transparent fashion that provides price transparency, provides disclosure about the issuers that are quoted on the ATS, provides fast settlement as compared to typical private resales. In addition to that, T0 also operates a cryptocurrency business that is a nice adjunct to our private securities business and is looking to really develop a frictionless one-stop user experience that allows our customers to trade private securities, cryptocurrencies, public stocks coming soon, NFTs to the extent that they are securities or not, potentially, and other assets in a frictionless, seamless user experience that will is sort of forerun what we anticipate is the inevitable convergence, across asset types and technology rails down the road.
Okay. All right. So could you give us a quick update on the availability of the clearing and settlement services of the T0 ATS?
Absolutely. T0 ATS has been trading blockchain-enabled securities for a number of years now at scale since January 2019. Those securities were rolled out and incorporated blockchain elements that were consistent with the pace of innovation that the regulators were accepting. Those securities, from a custody, clearing, and settlement perspectives, were traditional securities, so they were not custody, cleared, and settled on chain. And T0 partnered with a third-party clearing firm to permit for custody and clearing and settlement of those transactions, which, by the way, even at this time, and even recognizing that the blockchain part of settlement has still been scaled back, although we'll talk more about that in a little bit, was still faster than sort of the industry T+2, and largely occurred on the same day basis.
And but who's that third-party clearing? Who's the third-party clearer?
It's Apex.
Oh, okay.
Apex Pro. And we've also have been working to internalize the clearing function. And we've received regulatory approval for T0 ATS to become self-clearing. And we're looking forward to launching that in the very near future. That will allow us to accelerate the velocity of onboarding assets on our platform. We had a great partnership with Apex, but of course, being in control of your own back office functions is optimal from a streamlined kind of efficiency perspective.
And then just quickly, are there any more regulatory steps to come in addition to what you've already said?
There are no more material regulatory steps to come. This is in the implementation stage.
Okay, great. So how many broker-dealer subsidiaries does the T0 ATS have, and how many more are expected?
So T0 ATS itself is operated by a broker-dealer called T0 ATS, but it itself does not have any broker-dealer subsidiaries. It has sister broker-dealer entities that are owned by sort of a T0 parent company called T0 Group indirectly. And specifically, it has two broker-dealer sister entities. It has a sister entity called T0 Markets. That's a broker-dealer that essentially opens up investor accounts. So where investors like you and me or institutions, we service U.S. investors. We also service on reverse inquiry basis investors from approximately 50 international jurisdictions can come open up a brokerage account and get access to assets that trade on T0 ATS. So that's T0 Markets. Been operating for about a year and a half, and is really an important part of this kind of the seamless, frictionless trading ecosystem that I described. In addition to that, we also own a broker-dealer called SpeedRoute. SpeedRoute is more of a traditional agency routing business, services broker-dealer clients. It has terrific smart order routing software in the equity space that we've been actively thinking about deploying in other spaces like crypto, for example, where execution is sort of a work in progress.
Okay, all right. So I have a few questions about the T0 ATS clearing and custody model, supporting a private digital securities trading. When will that support begin? I think you touched on a little bit, but
yeah, absolutely.
This is the support for the digital securities, the digital assets.
Absolutely. So the story with how far blockchain can really exist in the security space has been an evolving one and has largely been driven by regulation. We've been one of the early pioneers to deploy the benefits and promise of blockchain technology in sort of an incremental way. And so we incorporated elements of blockchain technology that didn't impact record keeping, custody, or settlement, but just provided transparency into an issuer's capital structure. We've called those digitally enhanced securities. And those are the securities that rely on traditional custody and settlement model that I mentioned, where we used Apex. Now we're going to be going self-clearing. Obviously, as you move down the spectrum of sort of blockchain penetration in private securities trading, you move towards what you describe, Eugene, as digital asset securities. And those are securities that are recorded on chain, custodied on chain, and transferred on chain. The SEC last year put out a number of really important pieces of guidance that sort of turned a lot of regulatory headwinds into tailwinds on how a broker-dealer may trade kind of full blockchain securities. Those really involve two paths: either a broker-dealer ATS, effectively working with a custodian, or the investors themselves setting up a separate custody account where the digital asset securities are custodied. And once the trade matches on chain, then the custodian, and it's it'd be someone, it'd be a state or a national charter bank usually, would record the transfer and settle the transaction, more or less instantaneously, both the securities and the money piece. And the other path, of course, is for what's called a special purpose broker dealer. That was an important piece of guidance the SEC put out in December of last year that allows the creation of new special purpose broker dealers that can effectively transact in full blockchain digital asset securities, and they can be custodied and settled on chain without a clearing firm. There's a process for becoming a special purpose broker dealer. T0, among other industry participants, has been working actively to pursue that option, as well as to engage with the regulators and markets in a dialogue on how the proposed rules can be improved in a number of respects.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So many questions, but I guess, can one client get both digital security support and support for transactions traded publicly through the national market system and MS in the United States? Is that possible right now?
So the short answer is yes. I think the public NMS stocks would be custodied and settled through the facilities of the DTCC, as is normally the case. Private securities, whether they're digital or not, and if they're not considered digital asset securities, they'd be custody and settled, through either a clearing firm or a self-clearing function that we described. And to the extent that they're digital asset securities, would need to comply with the custody and settlement models that I described, either through a custodian or a special purpose broker dealer. And in practice, an investor could have access to a brokerage account and a front end that would show them, her positions in each type of security and ability to enter order instructions to trade those securities. In case of those that are being settled through a custodian, those instructions would also be simultaneously delivered to a custodian.
Okay. Just changing gears a little bit. There's a big move toward T+1. Where only a couple of days ago, SIFMA, ICI, and the DTCC set out a roadmap for a T+1 transition to start really in 2024. I guess one, what are your thoughts about that? And two, will the T0 ATS support T+1 and T+0 settlement, or do you already support it now?
That's a terrific question. I think it gives me an opportunity to talk about another aspect of of T0 endeavors in the public securities markets. I won't belabor your audience's time with kind of the conversation about the benefits of faster settlement and what happened earlier this year with GameStop. I think T0 has been part of that conversation for years, including talking about some of the downside of delayed settlement and opaque capital structures of public companies, and some of the consequences of short trading activity that occur or are enabled, at least in part, by the delayed settlement cycle. As part of that, T0 has been a partner in a joint venture called BSTX, Boston Securities Token Exchange, together with Boston Options Exchange, the other JV partner. And we've been working through the SEC process to get the first national securities exchange approved in the United States that is going to leverage blockchain technology, again, in an incremental way that at first will enable faster settlement cycles for those participants who opt in for that, as well as on-chain data transmission. But of course, as the industry evolves, that could be expanded. On the private side, T0 ATS already supports faster settlement cycles. Our transactions generally settle end of day, and obviously we work to accelerate that.
There are many lessons that we're still learning about blockchain technology, but what has T0 learned about the usage of blockchain technology for securities operations? What are some things that you didn't expect?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think the market potential for introducing an ecosystem where that is digitally native, that is self-regulating, that resides on a single technology layer, with participants being able to interact with each other directly in a way that is cheaper, faster, more inclusive, is a tremendous vision. But one thing that we've learned is that it's an incremental step-by-step process. There are a lot of conversations, and they go back years, and we were probably party to some of them, that sort of assume that transformation, in the public markets and in the private markets would happen overnight. And the reality is that, the US financial system is tremendously complex and developed over decades and has gone through a series of shifts, whether you talk about dematerialization of securities and shift from floor to electronic trading, et cetera. And so, the shift from from the current kind of electronic book entry driven record keeping and trading environments to a digital environment is going to be a gradual one. And we have to live with kind of a step-by-step progress towards that. An ability to do that and to have a viable business that allows you to utilize the incremental uses of blockchain, while of course keeping the vision in mind, and at the same time engaging in the productive dialogue with the industry that particularly clarifies how these, there's a lot of crypto has been a curse and a blessing. Crypto has, of course, elevated the conversation about the benefits of blockchain. It's also been a downside in the sense that people conflate a whole bunch of issues around digital security innovation with, things that they rightly or wrongly believe about cryptocurrencies. And so, engaging in that continuous dialogue with regulators, policymakers, business partners is really important and a challenge.
And people forgetting that no matter what the technology, there has to be some kind of securities operation staff, little elves behind the scenes getting it all done. And
I think that's absolutely
and whatever tools they use, either old school or new school.
That's absolutely right, Eugene. And I think the point about integration, right? We've talked about the incremental iterative pace of innovation and the back office operations that you just mentioned, and the premium of integrating legacy systems with new digital blockchain systems is going to be super important. T0 developed a patent in January 2019 that governs aspects of integration of legacy Wall Street systems with blockchain-based trading environments. And so I think this, the pace of integration of system, because it's not going to happen overnight. You talked about T+1 2024. You can imagine how long it's going to take, for the system to really evolve to, T0. And integrating of the old with the new and being able to do so in a frictionless way is going to be really important.
Okay. So lastly, will most firms be needing support for digital and publicly traded securities? Do you see that happening? And if so, how soon will this become a reality for most financial services firms?
So a couple of perspectives on it. I think, I'm a secular believer in the internet of money, and what internet did for data and voice, digital doing to anything of value, and moving towards an ecosystem where, again, value, whether they're securities, whether it's cash or money or however you choose to define that, whether it's assets like NFTs, are being digitally native, self-regulating through the unique power of smart contracts, transparent, residing on a single technology layer, with investors and other users interacting in a minimally intermediated way, again, because of the self-regulating nature of these instruments, in a way that's faster, cheaper, more inclusive, and global. And the convergence of traditional public stocks onto that model, we remain secular believers in, and it's obviously an incremental journey. I think, while you play out that transition, you're going to have an increasing number of asset types that are going to be more digitally enabled than public stocks, just because that ecosystem takes longer to evolve, whether they're private securities, whether it's security NFTs or non-security NFTs, whether it's, of course, cryptocurrencies, and the ability of market participants to be able to meet their investor demands across these asset types from a user experience perspective, as well as from a back office perspective, frictionlessly and seamlessly is really important.
Okay, and I apologize, I said lastly, but this is the last question. Do you have any predictions about what the regulators may be doing in 2022 about blockchain and crypto and about this digital revolution that is hitting them?
Yeah, look, I think anyone who thinks that there is not going to be more regulation in 2022, although 2021 is not over yet, is optimistic. I like optimism, but probably unrealistic. So you are going to see continuing political and regulatory dialogues. You're going to see continuing regulatory action, rulemaking. You're going to see regulation by enforcement. I think a lot of the conversation, well, does blockchain need to be regulated to begin with, is misplaced. Of course, it needs to be regulated in order to evolve towards the vision that we talked about. The question is how, and a lot of the principles that animate traditional regulation, like investor protection and others, of course, have very important concepts to be transplanted to the digital ecosystem. The question is that how do you develop the details? Transforming the same best execution rules that work for book entry equities to cryptocurrencies doesn't work. Although no one can debate that you need to have the principle of best execution. So that needs to happen in partnership with policymakers and regulators and the industry to develop those rules. And that's, I very much hope that's going to be the case.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you. And then to everyone, happy winter holidays, whatever you're celebrating. And Alan, thank you again. Thank you. This was really helpful.
Thank you for having me. Delighted to talk to you.